Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Monday, May the 29th, 2023. It's my birthday tomorrow and I hate birthdays. Maybe that's because I'm a Gemini. Geminis perhaps regard every single birthday as another nail in their coffin. You're 1 year closer to being dead. And particularly this birthday, I'm going to be 61 years old, and it really kind of hits me. And when I make these YouTube videos, I have to actually look at myself, and I can see myself sort of aging in front of me. It's just not getting any better. So those are my thoughts. And what the hell am I doing here? Why am I here? I'm too old to be doing this stuff. On the other hand, I'm going to be dead soon. I mean, I don't say that because I know I'm going to be dead soon, but I'm saying that because I'm going to be dead soon. Anyone at 61 is going to be dead soon. I mean, in fact, we're all going to be dead soon, aren't we? But I'm probably going to be dead sooner than most people. Yeah, I spent a long time learning about astrology, practicing astrology, thinking about astrology, and I'm going to be dead soon. So I suppose I feel that I have some obligation to tell people about astrology before it's too late. Or rather, tell people about my astrology, my particular approach to astrology. But anyway, I'm deviating. Now, I did promise that, not quite promise, but I did say that in these videos I would just focus on today's astrology. But today I'm going to break that promise because today is John F. Kennedy's birthday, or it would have been his birthday. And John F. Kennedy was born on May the 29th, 1917. So it would be his 106th birthday. And so what I want to do today is look at his chart. I mean, why not? Let's honour the president, particularly as, I almost share my birthday with his. Of course, I'm not in his league. So let's look at John F. Kennedy's chart. Now, just a reminder, I will be looking at today's astrology. But first, I want to look at John F. Kennedy's chart. Because, it's an interesting chart. It's a famous chart. I think a lot of astrologers are familiar with his chart. So here we go. Here is John F. Kennedy's chart. And obviously, he's a Gemini. There's his sun at 7:51 Gemini. Now, John F. Kennedy had a reputation for being a very fast speaker. I think of all the American presidents, he was able to speak the fastest, and so he was very fluent with words. And so, we should be looking at his chart to see that fluency. Okay, Geminis can be fluent with words, but on its own, does Sun in Gemini talk about verbal fluency? Perhaps we do have to look for some supporting evidence of that. When you communicate, it's a Mercury thing. And there we have John F. Kennedy's Mercury, conjunct Jupiter, conjunct Mars. In other words, he had Mercury on the Mars-Jupiter midpoint. And so I think that helps explain why he was such an effective communicator. And perhaps why he was so intelligent. I mean, he was an extremely intelligent president. I don't know, you have these lists of IQs of presidents and they vary, and I don't know whether these IQs are true or not, but him and probably Bill Clinton was pretty intelligent, whatever you think of him. And so I think that has a lot to do perhaps with his Mercury conjunct Jupiter. However, in astrology, the 8th house is to do with death. And we notice a load of stuff in the 8th house. He has Mars on the 8th house cusp. He had Mercury in the 8th, Jupiter in the 8th, Sun in the 8th, Venus, I think that just goes over into the 9th. So it's got 4 planets in the 8th house. Now, if you've got a lot of stuff in your 8th house, that's really no need to worry. You're not going to die early because of that. But what do we know about John F. Kennedy? He died in a very public way, and he had an enormous sex drive. And now the 8th house is connected with sex. It's also connected with death. And so in a way he really was living out his eighth house. One thing about his public death, I mean, he was assassinated on November the 22nd, 1963. If you look at his natal chart, we notice something quite interesting. Let's blow those up. The hypothetical planet Cupido, let me make this a bit bigger. The hypothetical planet Cupido, which is there, is on his Mars-Saturn midpoint, very closely aspecting by semi-square sesquiquadrate his Mars-Saturn midpoint. So what does that mean? Well, Cupido is the planet of marriage. It's a planet of union. And so it kind of makes sense that he was assassinated in public right next to his wife. Cupido's marriage, Mars-Saturn is death. And so that perhaps describes his death. And also you see Mars-Zeus, which is, the gunshot. And so that kind of describes his death, these midpoints, I think, involving Cupido and Mars-Saturn and Mars-Zeus. So as far as other things in his life are concerned, I did talk about Kennedy's chart quite recently, but just to go over it again. Kennedy is famous for his infidelity. He was not faithful to his wife. I mean, he was famous for that. And so, how does this relate to his chart? Well, I think we can see how it might relate to his psychology, because Kennedy had Moon in Virgo, square Venus in Gemini, and so Moon in Virgo and Venus in Gemini would represent two aspects of the feminine. Moon in Virgo would be a woman who was very organized, perhaps the stay-at-home wife, the perfect wife, the perfect woman, a woman who is completely moral, spotless, all that kind of stuff. That's Moon in Virgo. And then you've got Venus in Gemini, in square to the Moon in Virgo. And so that represents a very different aspect of the feminine. That is the young woman. It is the woman who is Gemini, promiscuous. Or to put it crudely, Venus in Gemini is the whore. So that's perhaps two aspects of the feminine, which was just such an important part of Kennedy's life and Kennedy's reputation. As far as how he managed to get to be president, always look at the midheaven, and we notice that he's got Saturn conjunct the midheaven, or he had Saturn conjunct the midheaven. Now, Saturn has a bad reputation as a planet. It's supposed to be negative. It's supposed to be difficult. But when it's conjunct the midheaven, Saturn often works very well. Even when it's in a bad sign. I mean, Saturn does not work well in Cancer, because it rules Capricorn. Therefore, it's in its detriment in the opposite sign, or in the opposite sign of Cancer. So that's that might be a bit difficult to deal with. But in his case, Saturn on the midheaven, that was enough. That was enough to propel him to the presidency. Thinking about other people, Margaret Thatcher, I think she had Saturn in Scorpio on the midheaven. Hitler, I think, had Saturn in Leo in the 10th house. So Saturn in the 10th house, even if it's in a poor sign, can be very effective. Now, as far as his death is concerned, I do like to look at the solar return for the solar return immediately before he died. So here is the solar return set for May the 29th, 1963. So this was a return exactly 60 years ago, on his birthday. And what do we see? We notice that the ascendant set for his birthplace, Brookline, Massachusetts, is 2343 Scorpio. And Saturn is at 23.6 Aquarius. So Saturn is making a stressful 90-degree aspect to his ascendant. Further, Mars is at 2752 Leo. So Mars is opposition Saturn. So Mars and Saturn have a death pair. And both of them are square the ascendant. Furthermore, Mercury at 21 Taurus is opposition the ascendant. So in the jargon, we had this grand cross hitting the ascendant. Now, that perhaps doesn't necessarily guarantee that he was going to be killed in the year following his solar return, but it's certainly a very difficult signature, that grand cross. Notice also that this solar return, he had Sun in the 7th. The 7th is the open enemy. It's one's enemies in general. If you're into conspiracy theories, you're going to have all sorts of ideas about who JFK's enemies were and how they might have killed him. But yeah, that sun in Gemini in the seventh house is not entirely fortunate. It might suggest that his fate was in the hands of other people. We also notice that up here we have he had a Moon-Pluto conjunction on the midheaven. That moon in Virgo, it's very public. And so perhaps again that's saying that he was going to be appearing in public, and in this case he was going to be dying in public. Now, one point I do want to make about this solar return, which links to a controversy in astrology. Now, astrologers often argue about how one sets up a solar return. So remember, the solar return is a chart set for the moment the sun returns to where it was, to where it was when you were born. So what chart do you set up? Do you set it up for the place you were born, or do you set it up for the place you happen to be at the time of your solar return? I would argue you set it up for the place you were born, and this is certainly the traditional approach to solar returns. The reason being is that fundamentally you can't escape your fate. I do at some level think that when you're born, the date of your death is kind of like a placard around your neck. And so we can't escape that by deciding to have our birthday somewhere else. Maybe we can change small aspects of our experience over the coming year by changing the location of where we have our birthday, but we can't change the fundamental things. So Brooklyn, Massachusetts, That's a solar return I went for, and you can see he had Saturn exactly square his ascendant, and Mars squaring the ascendant, and Mercury opposition the ascendant. I think perhaps that was really quite a good signature of his death, and we can also see that the Sun is square Pluto, and Pluto was on the midheaven at the time of that solar return. So I think that Pluto was the final key. That's having his Sun square Pluto really is another signature that this was going to be his final year on the planet. Anyway, that's enough of John F. Kennedy. Sorry he was assassinated. Sorry he's not still alive, though he would be 106, so that he would be quite old today. So as far as today's planets are concerned, this is the chart for today, Monday, May the 29th, 2023. I set it for noon in New York. So what is the main theme? So today, the moon moves from Virgo into Libra. I think that's a good thing. You know, moon in Virgo can be a bit too picky, a bit too into details. Libra is a more relaxed sign. And so with the moon in Libra, I think we're going to find it easier to get on with people. Our social skills are going to be better than average. And the moon is also, it's making a trine to Pluto. So we can socialize very well, but we can also be quite manipulative. If we want something to happen our way, we can make it happen, but we don't have to be dramatic about it. We can just use our social skills, bit of compromise here, bit of compromise there. But if we keep in mind the big picture, we want to get our way ever so gently. Yes, I think we can be very successful. Now, I'm not saying though that it's just all going to be a calm, relaxing day. There are some other things which we need to take note of. Now, look at this chart. You've got Pluto at 0 degrees Aquarius. You've got Mars at 5 degrees Leo, so they're opposition each other. And we've got Jupiter on the midpoint. So that means that we've got a T-square involving Mars, Pluto and Jupiter, indeed, and the North Node as well. And we've got Jupiter on the midpoint. So what does that mean? Well, I think some of us are going to want to really get our way. We're going to be really into getting noticed, being successful, and we're certainly not going to be into compromise. And I think we can be very successful through the power of our feelings. We can create real transformation, and as a result of this transformation, we can be extremely successful, and we can get people on our side. Now, another midpoint combination that one can't help noticing is the Sun and Venus. They're in semi-square to each other, and they're both aspecting the Hades Apollon midpoint. Now that sounds really obscure, the Hades Apollon midpoint, but you know, Hades is about it's not just about death. It's about garbage. It's about decay. And when you put Apollon there, Apollon shows a bit of talent, shows a bit of skill, and when we put it together, it really talks about our relationship to poverty. You know, I took that from the rules for interpreting planetary pictures, the German book on midpoints, and they do mention poverty, and I think a lot of us are going to really notice the poverty around us. Doesn't matter how much your house is worth, doesn't matter how rich your neighborhood is. Poverty can't be avoided. And it doesn't matter if it's Memorial Day, if you're trying to ignore the real world and its seamy underside. You just can't avoid it. Poverty is all around us, and all of us were going to be aware of that poverty. And I think because of that, we're going to be wanting to do something about it. We're going to think, how we're going to be thinking. We can't help think, why is there so much poverty around us? Is it karma, or is it just bad government policy, or is it greed? And I think in our own small way, we can do something about it. Maybe we can alleviate poverty in one small area for maybe 5 minutes. Or maybe we're going to be inclined to take political action. So think about that. Okay, now as far as the 12 signs are concerned, here are my forecasts. Aries, relationships are taking center stage, and with another person's help, you can begin the path to transformation. Taurus, you are aware of society's poverty and decay. A small act of service won't go unnoticed. Now, I put that whole poverty thing, I dump it on Taurus, and the reason I dump it on Taurus is because Venus rules Taurus, and it's Venus that is on the Cupido-Apollon midpoint. Gemini, you can feel an uplift of energy, and through pure creativity, you can reach new solutions. Cancer, there is nothing much that you have to do, but while relaxing, you might have an important realization. Leo, you can express yourself in a powerful, compelling way. In love, you may make some excellent progress. Virgo, the budget needs to be balanced, and your sense of detail can make a big difference. Libra, you're in tune with the world, and through your gentle interventions, you can create big changes. Scorpio, it's time to get off the roller coaster, to be an observer rather than a participant. Sagittarius, you have a surprising amount of energy, but used in the wrong way, it could cause a lot of damage. Capricorn, at work, you're in your element, and your ability to compromise makes you special. Okay, I know it's Memorial Day. If you're American, you might not be working. Is it a bank holiday? It might even be a bank holiday in the UK as well. But still, try to focus. If you're a Capricorn, do try to focus on something to do with business and career and whatever, because I think there may be some real opportunities there. Aquarius, what changes do you want to bring about? Make a list, make your demands. And finally, Pisces, you're not very visible, but that doesn't mean that you can't have a huge impact. So I'm now going to turn to the I Ching, and it is not a particularly dramatic reading. It's number 29, the Abyss. It doesn't move, it's locked. Now, you might think that the Abyss is a really bad hexagram. It can be bad if it moves, but on its own, it's fine, provided we understand what it means. So today, with the Abyss as the hexagram for the day, I think we're dealing with a situation which, yes, it is dangerous. Things could go wrong. But fortunately, we are aware of what could go wrong. It's not a danger we don't know about. It's a danger we're familiar with. And because we're familiar with this danger, we know how to deal with it. We just have to accept its nature and run with it. The I Ching talks about water. Water has the line of least resistance. It moves in a particular way. And if we're familiar with the danger and we're familiar with the way it moves, we can just run with it without actually getting hurt by it. Now, by the way, I'm not saying that you should do anything dangerous. You know, if something is dangerous, it's dangerous. Don't pick up poisonous snakes or anything like that. You know, but we're dealing with, not. I don't think we're not dealing with dangers in terms of getting killed or hurt. It's just, I don't think, I hope not, but we're dealing with, a difficult situation, but a difficult situation that you are familiar with. And in fact, we can also express our maturity, and we can perhaps help other people deal with the dangers that they're facing. And it's, in that sense, it's a great day for imparting knowledge. Anyway, that is all I'm going to say for today, and I will talk to you tomorrow.